Hello, my friends, and welcome to a very special episode of the Million Pound Mission podcast, where you're going to get to listen in as I do some coaching with members of our free Mission Possible community. Now, inside this amazing free community, we're doing regular one-on-one hot seat strategy sessions, group chats, and special guest deep dives, and that is only the beginning, my friend. Now, head on over to millionpoundmission.com and join the Mission Possible community for free, and download your virtual welcome kit so you can join us on our next video chat or strategy session and take advantage of all of the amazing transformation resources I've put together for you inside that free membership. All right, without further delay, let's dive into this episode. All right, friends, we are in another community deep dive celebrity guest influencer chat session. I've got the world famous Rachel Gregory on here with us here tonight. I'm very excited because Rachel is somebody that I've gotten to know over the last few months. I'm super impressed with everything she is putting out there. Her blog is amazing. Her content is amazing. Her social media is amazing. And she's got a new podcast coming out in the next couple of weeks that is going to be super, super awesome. So Rachel, welcome to the Mission Possible community chat. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So just give us like the 2-minute big overview of what you're about and what you're doing in the health space right now.
Sure. So I'm a board certified nutritionist and strength and conditioning coach. So I really focus on, I came into kind of this world and this community through the ketogenic diet. About 5 years ago, I did the first study looking at keto in non-elite CrossFit athletes. It was a really successful study. It got a lot of traction. And so I kind of just rolled with it when I graduated from grad school and kind of just fell in love with the community and really went on my own journey working with clients and teaching and learning about the ketogenic lifestyle, about low carb lifestyles. Kind of just ended up in right now, I'm very passionate about this whole concept of metabolic flexibility, just from going through my own transformations and just learning along the way. I'm a huge advocate of like learning the why behind the what, not just having someone tell you what to do, but understanding why you're doing what you're doing. Because if you don't understand that, you're never going to be able to sustain any results that you get. And so that's what I'm big on with all the clients I work with. I teach as much as I can and learn as much as I can myself. And so right now, my main focus is really kind of working with women in particular and helping them to really just unleash the confidence and I like to call it badassery inside them to really just be as confident and, as possible. Yeah. Hopefully I didn't just put you on the explicit list.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
You could say badassery, badass-tastic, whatever. But it's all good. All right. So those of you that are joining us live here, if you guys have a question, you can either type the question in the chat or just type that you have a question in the chat, and then we will connect you with Rachel here live. Now, I think a good place to start, Rachel, would be, can you just explain what metabolic flexibility is? That's something that's a term that I'm sure not everybody's super familiar with.
Sure. So metabolic flexibility in the simplest terms is just the ability of your body to be able to use different fuel sources efficiently. So we know that we have the main fuel sources are sugar or carbs, glucose, and fat. And so what we're supposed to be doing is using fat and really ketones as well at rest. So when we're, sitting at our desk all day, we're not active, we're kind of in this rest and digest mode, we should be able to tap into our fat stores and use those as energy. Versus if we're out, doing high intensity activity or running from a tiger or something like that, that's when, that glucose and carbohydrate, that's when we need that fuel. And so really in kind of this day and age, most of us are always kind of in that, unless we are following a lower carb or ketogenic lifestyle or diet, we're in that kind of sugar burning mode, right? So we're always burning sugar if you're someone who is hungry every few hours, you're always thinking about food, you have, these energy fluctuations, maybe your blood sugar is going up and down throughout the day. You notice you're like energetic at one second, and then like half an hour later you're ready to take a nap, and this is just like going on throughout the day. That is really that sugar burner mode, and we really want to be able to be in both modes when we need. So we want to be in this fat burner mode and this sugar burner mode when we need them. And so really this comes down to our metabolism and our body being able to be flexible, right? And so most of America is very inflexible, very metabolically inflexible. And this is what we're starting to see is one of the root causes of a lot of these diseases that are coming up, especially, type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome and all these things, because we are, as a society, so metabolically inflexible that we cannot tap into our own fat stores to use for energy. We can't, we're on this blood sugar roller coaster all day long. We're never having this like steady release of energy. And so these are some of the issues that are causing further issues. And so I think it's something that is super important, and that's why I'm super passionate about learning about it myself and teaching about metabolic flexibility.
Yeah, it seems like most Americans, especially, like we're riding blood sugar, caffeine, and stimulants, and that's what gets us through the day, and then we still feel like we're going to fall asleep at like 2:00. So, all right, let's dive into some questions here. Tamar has a question about MCT and coconut oil. So let's bring in Tamar. Tamar, you are live with Rachel. Go ahead and fire away.
Hey, Rachel. It's nice to video meet you.
You too.
So I started Robert Sykes' Deeper State Keto so I can get into it, which is kind of both feet in right away because it's only 10 grams of carbs to start off with.
Yeah.
And I'm having troubles adapting to the higher fat. So the first week was really bad. And over the last couple of weeks has gotten better, and my energy is really good. I feel amazing, but I feel like it's just everything just goes through me. I tried transitioning from MCT oil over to coconut oil just so I can increase my fats. But do you have any suggestions for that?
Yeah. So you said you jumped right in to what were you doing before?
I was doing basically kind of whole foods, trying to eat as clean as possible, but I did go on holidays right before, and the sugar might have been a little excessive. So,
Gotcha. Yes. So in my experience, and I know about Robert's program. I love Robert's program. He's definitely in the camp of higher fat. My take on what I promote for my clients and what I've seen for me personally is not as high fat. It's more a little bit higher protein. So that's usually kind of what I'm used to advocating. But in terms of the fat part of it, I would say that, have you tried, maybe getting away from the MCT and coconut oil and incorporating more like monounsaturated fats, like whole food fats that kind of come with fiber as well? So obviously avocados have carbs in them, and you're trying to stick to 10 carbs. So maybe not avocados, but maybe like olives and things like that are more, whole food fats. I can't speak today.
yeah, I haven't yet, but that was kind of where I was going to go next, is try something else. So I thought if you had some recommendations, then I'd try that.
And have you tried, instead of, because a lot of people tend to have issues with MCT oil. I never actually could really tolerate MCT oil. Like you said, it went right through me. So I actually tolerate MCT powder very well. Have you tried MCT powder at all?
No, I have not.
Okay. Because MCT powder, basically what it is, it's just MCT oil that is bound to a carrier, and the carrier is a fiber source. Different brands use different carriers. I particularly would look for acacia fiber as the carrier. Some brands use soluble corn fiber. I know Quest uses soluble corn fiber. Some people can tolerate it, some people can't. I personally like acacia fiber. I use the Perfect Keto MCT powder. And basically what it is just MCT oil, and they spray dry it onto this fiber source, which is acacia fiber. And that's what makes it into MCT powder. So you'll see the ingredients are acacia fiber. If you get one that has acacia fiber, it'd be acacia fiber and MCT oil. It will have a few carbs on it just because acacia fiber is a carb. But from my experience, it's not, I haven't had anybody like react to, anything with the fiber part of it. Obviously it depends on the person. It depends on how you react to it. But from my experience, it's much easier on the gut. And it's also like it also just is easier to incorporate into foods, right? So MCT oil is very oily, and sometimes putting that in your coffee or on other things is not very pleasant. So MCT powder is a really good alternative. And I actually wrote a blog post. It's not on my blog, but it is on, if you Google like MCT powder versus MCT oil, there'll be like some pros and cons. So you can get a little bit more info there, but I would definitely try that. And then also just try to incorporate some more whole food sources and coconut oil as well and things like that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, and also thinking like, all right, if you want to go keto, and maybe you can't do 10 grams, but maybe you can get 25 grams and you can eat an avocado and get some fiber in and you're good. Like find that happy medium. I've got a great MCT oil story for you, Rachel. I first started taking MCT oil. It was like over a decade ago. It was right where I had just started my whole weight loss journey. And it was like an old school brand, like a bodybuilder sold it to me. I'm like, yeah, this is going to be good. And it was just tearing up my stomach. Like nothing was digesting. And I was losing weight fast. I was like, this is great. No, but like my stomach was burning, like nothing was digesting. So I let the bottle sit for like a couple of weeks. I'm like, oh, I can't touch this. I came back to it in my cupboard. I opened it up and the oil had ate through the plastic bottle. Like it basically decayed the bottle and was leaking out onto my, that was happening inside my stomach. So I'm like, this is why I didn't digest well. So yeah, it ate through the bottle.
Yeah.
So that wasn't good. But things have come a long way since then in the MCT, but it scared me for a decade. I'm like, I can't touch this stuff. There's no way. So yeah, scary. All right, let's move on to Brittany. She has a boatload of questions. So Brittany, you are live with Rachel Gregory. Go ahead and fire away.
Hi. Excuse me. So first question I have is you're talking about metabolic flexibility, and I know you've talked about carb cycling and stuff before. Do you base that only on activity, or do you base that more around like your cycle, especially for women, or do you do kind of a play of both?
Great question. So I would say it really depends on the person, and I think it's a play of both. For me particularly, I do it around activity, just because that's more of like what I'm focused around. Like I'm focused on my performance, and I know that I personally feel better incorporating more of a targeted and cyclical approach. So for me, I do like more of a targeted approach where I put carbs around my workouts. And I also do a cyclical approach. So I kind of like do a hybrid method. I incorporate like a higher carb day on the weekends as well, which is more just like for me personally, because I like to enjoy sweet potatoes and squash and more fruit and things like that. And sometimes on the weekends, it's easier to like kind of have that day to look forward to a little bit. And so it's more just like the pleasure aspect of it, but then the activity aspect of it would be the carbs around my workout. But for clients, some of them are not as active, right? For me, I am lifting for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, 5 days a week. I have clients who do not do that. And so if they are struggling with some hormonal issues or, irregular cycles or things like that, then incorporating carbs around certain periods of their cycle, especially like right before their cycle starts, like the 2 days before, has shown to help. What I've found is that there are some people who, say specific days that you should focus on incorporating carbs around your cycle. But what I found is that really when it's different from what I've seen with my clients, it's different from person to person. So it's really when those cravings start to hit, like there's like this period of time that you get those cravings. You're going through that cycle, obviously. And so that would be the time, when usually it's when you're just ravenous and you can't get full off of the foods that you're eating. You start to see the mood changes, things like that. You start to crave chocolate and things like that. So that would be the time when I'd say, okay, if this is the time that you're craving these things, then maybe we should incorporate a carb up, right? And so that would look like incorporating, I always stick with whole foods, right? Whole food sources. If you start moving towards, going towards packaged foods and, allowing yourself to say, oh, it's a carb up day, so I can have a donut and all this stuff. Like that's when we get into the issues. And that's where it's like probably not helping. So I would say, things like sweet potatoes, fruit, squash, those are the main things that I would focus on. Sometimes even like people tolerate like white rice. Those are some other options, but it all comes back to, and people hate when you say this, but it depends, right? It depends on the person, because something that works for someone is not going to work for the other person. And it all kind of comes back to experimenting. And so this is something that I really teach I have a Keto for Women program, and we go through, each week is a new lesson. And 2 of the weeks we dive into everything carbohydrates, everything carb ups and all of that. And really, like I said, dive into the why behind the what. So rather than me just saying, hey, have this sweet potato on this day, okay, let's learn why we're doing that and how we can manipulate that in the future for when things do change, because we are always changing as humans. And so we have to understand the why behind the what. I'm sorry if I rambled on forever.
That was awesome. Thank you.
I don't know if you wanted to bring me on, because I tend to ramble on with my answers.
I love it. I love it. Now, so Brittany, I want to clarify a little bit of this too, because I know that you're newer to like a really consistent strength training game. Like Brittany started going to the gym now, and like she's lifting the weights, and it's not just like elliptical or walking around. Like she's going and hitting weights. So when we talk about using carbs too, like I've always had better success when it comes to like, if I'm going to have like a really hard ass leg training day, that's where you want to find, not necessarily I'm going to go do the elliptical or I'm going to go for a walk, so I need to carb up. It's like in the office, when Michael goes to Fazoli's before his like 5K walk run race or whatever to do a carb up. That's not the protocol that we want to do. But like the more intense, or if you were going to go and do like a mud run or an obstacle course race or something like that, that's like that intensity is where you want to take advantage of the carbs. That's where they're going to be used for good and not evil. So Rachel, am I speaking the truth here? Okay.
Yeah, 100% agree. And some people around training, some people like to have them before, after. There's all different. It really comes down to how you feel best. For me, I like to have a little bit before and a little bit after. After is important because of the recovery process and really getting like we have to kind of think about like the stress response and how carbs can actually have a place in the stress response. So when we are in kind of this, go mode, when we're working out, we want to get back into this parasympathetic state. And so carbs can help with that, because when we're working out, our cortisol is high. And we know that carbs can help with bringing that cortisol down in certain situations. It's a little bit more complex than that, but that's kind of like the recovery aspect of it. And then we also know, like right after we work out, our muscles are very insulin sensitive. So you'll hear people say that, after you work out, you can have a little bit more, you can have some carbs because your muscles will suck them all up, right? That's true to a degree. It really depends, like you said, on the intensity of the workout, how much, how experienced you are, and then also what your ultimate goal is. So that's also, we have to think about, like, what is the goal that you are shooting for, like at this period of time? Are you trying to build muscle? Are you trying to lose body fat? Are you trying to do both? But, it's just kind of thinking back to, are you trying to be in a strict state of ketosis for a specific mental reason? And when I say mental, I mean like cognitive, or you're trying to treat some neurological something. So we always have to think back, okay, what is the goal, or what is the main goal? And always think about that.
Are you, sorry, can I piggyback quick? Are
Yeah,
you
go.
talking like, for your carb ups, like kick you out of ketosis amounts of carbs, or like a little bit of a sweet potato, like 25 carb, like what kind of range do you play with?
Yeah, so it depends also on how long you have been quote unquote fat adapted or keto adapted. So how long have you been, are you following like a keto low carb diet?
Yeah. Yep. We did meat and bricks, and now I'm doing DSK too. So,
Okay. So
and then I've been keto for 2 years before that too. So,
oh, okay. So you're well adapted. So yeah, I would say that the more, really the more that's the thing. The more metabolically flexible you are, the more you can tolerate higher carbs and still quote unquote remain in ketosis. Just from anecdotal evidence and from personal experience, like there's sometimes when I have like if I've had a really hard training day and I even have like 100 grams of carbs, I can wake up the next morning and test my ketones and still be in ketosis. Personally, I don't pay attention that much to ketones unless I'm doing a specific experiment, or like I have a heavy week of work and I'm like, I know that if I'm in ketosis, I'll be in that focus mode. So that's when I'll pay attention to it. But this is something that a lot of people get wrong too. Like they thinking that you have to be in ketosis 24/7, especially when it comes to fat loss, if that's the goal. I personally don't think that's the case. And I think that it really comes back to that whole concept of metabolic flexibility and really training your body to be able to go in and out of ketosis relatively easy. So I would say, back to your question, it really just depends on you as an individual. And if your goal is to stay in ketosis, testing your ketones and testing out different carb amounts, I would say start with, if you want to take more of a targeted approach, just you maybe think about like the minimal effective dose, right? So maybe incorporating like 15 to 20 grams of carbs before your workout, see how you feel. And then incorporating kind of the same amount after, and see if you feel a difference. If you're testing ketones, test them. And then kind of just, titrate up or down depending on how you feel and, what your monitor shows you, if you're testing ketones and things like that. Does that make sense?
yes. Thank you.
No problem.
So from sitting back and like I said, I've kind of done a deep dive on all of Rachel's content because it's really, really well done. So Rachel, let me do, I want to kind of paint a picture of the road towards metabolic flexibility from what I've learned from reading your stuff. And basically it seems like the road flows through going keto and becoming fat adapted first. And then, because I know a lot of people are like, ooh, this sounds awesome, I need to get there, but you can't like back into metabolic flexibility from the standard American diet. From what I understand, that would be kind of like, it would take you being more of an outlier than the average person, to where we go low carb, high fat, become fat adapted, make that the home base that our body likes to be in. And then we start to reintroduce carbs effectively and efficiently so that our body becomes metabolically flexible and says, ooh, carbs, I am doing a strength training workout, I can use that for good and not evil. And then, otherwise we're fat adapted and flying off the ketone power. So you feel like that is a fairly accurate description of and generally just how you like to have people travel down that path?
Oh yeah, 100%. Because if you think about it, like the standard American diet and just how most of us have grown up, right? We've always been quote unquote sugar burners. Like we've never, as babies, most babies are actually born in ketosis. But then they're given sugar, right? They're given, past breast milk, but we're fed baby food and fruit and all this stuff. And so we, grow up in this sugar burning state, and carbs are everywhere. And that's what most of America, most of us, right, have grown up in. And so our bodies have never really been in a state of ketosis for a long period of time. And so we've never been fat adapted. So in order to be metabolically flexible and to learn and teach your body how to use fat for fuel and use ketones for fuel, you have to teach it how to get into ketosis first, right? And you have to stay there for a little bit. And exactly what you said, low carb keto, I believe, is like the home base. And then, if you travel away from that, that would be incorporating some carbs, but you always want to come back to that home base.
Yeah. Excellent. Now, that being said, Tamar had another question about what does carb cycling look like with keto? So I know it's very hard to be specific, but like I've talked to them, this community before, about both calorie cycling and carb cycling from a perspective of like each day has a certain amount and you kind of wave them throughout the week. Is that what you're talking about with carb cycling, or is it more of based off like my activity level is higher for the next 4 weeks, so my carbs will be up a little bit, and then they may cycle down off of that? Is it more of a weekly game, a daily game? Like when you're putting together a carb cycling strategy, what does that look like from kind of the macro perspective?
Yeah, so I'll kind of talk about what I do with my Keto Foreman program. So with that, we focus because we have a range of people. So instead of following like a targeted keto approach, which for me, like, I guess that was a little confusing what I gave, because mine's like a super hybrid. Like I do targeted and cyclical, but with them, we make sure that we're in ketosis for a period of time. And then we introduce a cyclical approach, which just means that we increase their carbohydrates on the weekends. Well, not on the weekends, but we start with one day, and that would look like bumping them up to about 100, it depends, 120, 150 grams of carbs. And when we do that, we bring the fat down. But when I do this, so this program is very based off, like the goal of this program is fat loss. And so doing that carb up, we also are using that as a refeed day. So we're incorporating calorie cycling. So during the week, they're in a deficit, right? And so we know that sometimes incorporating refeeds are beneficial to the process. They can kind of put this halt on the metabolic adaptation that occurs from dieting and being in a deficit. It can't stop it, but it kind of puts a little bit of a pause on that. Usually we see, this is kind of getting into other things, but like diet breaks and things like that are beneficial for long-term fat loss. But that's kind of another story. But in terms of carb ups, I would say start with what we do is start with one day a week where we bring the carbs up to about 120, 150 grams, bring the fats down. And that acts as the refeed. So your calories are coming back up to about maintenance level. So you're getting that boost in calories and also that boost in carbs. And then as we get further into the program, we go into phase 3 where some people will incorporate 2 days back to back of a carb up, and it tends to be on the weekend. So it's 5 days of more a keto low carb approach. So Monday through Friday is like, 50 grams or less usually of total carbs. And then on the weekends, we'll bump those carbs up to about 150 per day, bring the fat down. In terms of other macronutrients, that would depend on the individual, so where their macros are at. And we know that having that we know that carbs can boost the hormone leptin, right? Which is the hormone that tells us we're basically full. That's kind of the gist of it. But that's released from our fat cells. And carbs have been shown to be one of the best macronutrients to actually increase our leptin. And so doing that 2 days back to back for a 48-hour period, there's been some research that's shown that has helped versus just a 1 day refeed. And so that's kind of like the progression. But again, it comes back to where you're starting, where you're coming from, and also like learning the different strategies behind that too, and really understanding like the why behind it.
Awesome. Now, and just you guys know I like to plant seeds as we go along. Just to plant a seed, Rachel and I are working on a collaborative effort that we're going to do some sort of a challenge course. You know how I do the hybrid. It's a little bit of everything. So if you have ideas on what would be most beneficial for you, whether you're here live or if you guys are listening to this as a podcast, or if you're in the group, just bringing people along this road, kind of like a MetFlex 101 type of a thing, or just prepping your body for metabolic flexibility type of a challenge or something like that. We've had a couple of discussions on that. So just to plant that seed. All right, we have more questions. Let's bring in Dr. Tracy down in the bottom corner there. All right, Tracy. So she wants to know about keto with post-menopause. So Tracy, you're live with Rachel. Go ahead and fire away with your specific question.
Yep. Hi, Rachel.
Hi.
We want to know, because women who are postmenopause are obviously, hormones are different. We don't have the estrogen. So, what adjustments would you suggest as far as keto in general, or, carb cycling, because you can't really adjust it to your cycle because you don't really have one anymore?
Yeah, so I would say from my experience, actually, the women that I work with who are postmenopausal, they actually do better with a little bit more of strict ketosis, just because because you become a little bit more insulin resistant, usually when you get older. But really, it comes back to the individual. Some people do better with incorporating carb ups as well. So I would say there's not much of, really, just from my experience, it's been actually those women who are postmenopausal have actually a little bit of an easier time with being stricter ketosis. But again, it's hard to say because it's so individualized. Like, I've had someone I've worked with where it's not, and they have to take more of a lower carb approach and ease their way into it, or even incorporate carbs as well. But it all comes back to kind of trying different things out and really having and that's what I'm going back to my program, because this is what I teach. Like, I basically have all these different tools in the toolbox, and we start to incorporate them in different periods, and basically learning how to incorporate these different tools so that you can kind of pull them out and be like, all right, I'm going to try this, see how it works. Because that's also, things work at a period of time. And then as you grow and adapt and move on, like, they stop working, right? And so you have to have these different things that you're trying out. So did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Excellent. All right, Brittany's got another question. She did say she had a boatload, so that's fair game. All right, so about higher protein ratio. So go ahead and fire away there, Brittany.
Yes. So is there a reason that you recommend a higher protein ratio than a higher fat ratio? And is that specific to women, or do you recommend that across the board?
So personally, I recommend it across the board, just because what I found over the years with being in the keto low carb space is that there was a period of time where we went through this like fear of protein. It was kind of this whole concept of gluconeogenesis, and it kind of just got blown out of proportion. And I think that one of those things is also because the ketogenic diet is like, the basis of it is a therapeutic diet. So it came about to treat children who had epilepsy, right? So they had to be on this very strict, high fat diet because they needed to have ketones circulating through them 24/7. They needed a high fat approach. And so that's where the protein was very low. But when we get into the general population, most of us are not treating a neurological disorder, right? So that is where there's been a little bit of misconception with keeping protein low. And I think that just from my experience working with, especially with women, a lot of women come to me and their protein is just way too low for their activity level, for just general life, especially older. As you get older, you need more protein. And so I think that just in general, everybody should, unless you're, in my opinion, unless you're trying to treat some type of disease or disorder, or you have some other underlying disorder that does not allow you to have adequate protein, I think everybody should be having more protein, especially from animal sources and things like that. And especially for women too. We just know that protein in general, there's just so many benefits. I actually have a blog post that I wrote. It's literally called Protein is Queen. And I go through like all of the benefits of protein and why we should be focused on it, for sure.
Awesome.
Now,
thank you.
Do you have a recommendation like grams per pound body weight? Anything that we could go off of?
So I generally recommend it's a higher approach, but about 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. If you have upwards of 50 pounds to lose, you're probably going to be lower to the 0.8 grams per pound. If it's upward of 50 pounds, maybe down to 0.7 grams per pound. If you are in that if you're like, I have 10 pounds to lose and your goal is fat loss, I even bump it up to 1.2 grams per pound. Sometimes even in my keto form program, we do that because there have actually been studies that protein is, we know that protein has the highest thermic effect of food. So there's actually been studies where they've equated calories and had participants eat more protein, and they actually lost the same amount of weight as the control group with eating more calories, with those calories coming from protein. This is not always the case, but there are different studies with that, and that just comes back to protein being very, very having the highest thermic effect of food, which means your body just takes more energy to digest it versus carbs and fats, and also just protein being that building nutrient, right? So we need, if we're looking to build muscle, we're looking to lose body fat and just be overall satiated. We know protein is the most satiating nutrient. All of these things, all these benefits that I think are, especially if the goal is fat loss, that a lot of people need to understand for sure.
Now, with thermic effect of food with protein, would it be right to say like something like a whole food protein source will have a higher TEF than like a whey protein shake, just because of the digestive factor that happens there?
Yeah, exactly. And also the thermic effect of food, we have to realize that it is a very small percentage of the metabolism equation, but it's still a percentage and it still can add up over time. But definitely foods that are a whole food source is going to be have a higher thermic effect than anything that's processed. So you think protein has a higher thermic effect than carbs and fats, and then whole foods have a higher thermic effect than any processed food. And if you just think about it logically, your body is going to take more energy to break down a whole food because it's in its least processed form. Where if you have like a whey protein, it's already been broken down for you into that whey protein, right? So it's already been kind of halfway broken down, halfway digested. So when you consume it, your body doesn't have to use as much energy to break it down. But I mean, and I'm not saying whey protein is bad. Like that's actually good in certain scenarios, right? But in general, exactly what you said, the more whole food it is, the more energy it'll take to break down.
All right, now, and we're wrapping this up, ladies. So if you have any final questions, type them in the chat box. I will distract Rachel with one more of my own here. We haven't got a chance to talk about strength training yet, and that's something that I know that you're super knowledgeable on, but you don't necessarily get your brain picked on as much from that because people are too busy thinking about keto and Metflex and all that. So I'm going to give you a scenario, and I would like to see what you would recommend as far as a strength training schedule for this person. So let's say we have a female, of course, a female, because I'm surrounded by the amazing ladies of the community here. There are a few guys around there somewhere, but they just don't show their faces. So for things like this, I'm going to get an email because that's the one guy's be like, I'm here, man. So let's say there's a female between the age of like 40 and 50, shooting for a 30-pound weight loss goal. Like that's what they want to drop 30 pounds of body fat. What would the weekly strength training routine look like as far as frequency and type of training that you would recommend that person's doing?
Sure. So is this person new to completely new to strength training?
Let's say they've done like group fit, boot camp type stuff. They know enough to be dangerous. Okay.
So I always recommend usually starting out with like 3 days a week of strength-based training. This is something that a lot of, especially women, and this is something that I went through too. Like I would go to I did a lot of CrossFit, right? And I did CrossFit for the reasoning because I wanted to get a hard workout in. I wanted to feel the sweat. I wanted to be in that community, atmosphere and things like that. But my goal wasn't necessarily fat loss at that time. But with fat loss being the goal, number one, you have to find something that you can adhere to. So if that is CrossFit, if you enjoy and you know that you can go to CrossFit 3 days a week, get a good workout in, and you'll do that and you'll adhere to that, versus maybe going to a Globo gym that you're like, oh, maybe I'll go like 2 days a week and I just don't enjoy it, then I would say go to CrossFit, right? Because you want to be able to enjoy it. If you are someone who wants to go to the gym and just learn how to build strength and build muscle, I would start with 3 days a week of a full body program, focusing on, this is something that a lot of people don't think about either. When you go to the gym, you want to focus on progressive overload, right? You can't build muscle unless you are progressively overloading. And what that means is that, as simple as possible, it just means every time you go in the gym, you should be doing a little bit more each time. Whether that's an extra rep, another set, a little bit, 5 more pounds, you're progressively overloading your body. You have to do that to be able to build muscle. And the only way to know if you're doing that is you have to track your workouts, right? And so this is something that, I fell into a lot. I have a lot of clients who fall into this before we work together. It's like, they're just going to the gym and maybe lifting, doing a few lifts here and there of different things, but they're never following a program that is built for progressive overload and built long-term. So I would say definitely following a program is the number one thing. If you're not following the program, if you're not seeing how you're progressing week in and week out, you're never going to be able to build on that. And so I could go on and on, but hopefully that gave a little bit of intro.
No, that's great, because I know
Okay.
a lot of females are nervous about getting in the gym. Like I said, like Brittany's just like starting to get in there, and we finally got her, and then she's like, I like this. I like lifting weights. And once we get over that hump, it's really nice, and we see some great results. So I always like to just get some solidification of that, get some energy behind it, because I think that's
and also one thing that I've been talking about lately too, like on my podcast, is like, when you own a gym, honestly, you got to check your ego at the door and realize that no one cares, right? Everybody's in there on their own phone. They're looking at themselves in the mirror. They're not paying attention to you. So who cares, right? Like, go do what you came to do. Check your ego at the door. Realize that the person that next to you is not paying attention to either how much you're lifting. They're probably not looking at you. You got to kind of get out of that mindset. And that's just something that I've been talking about lately. Like, literally no one cares, right? You're there to do your thing. They're there to do their thing. But I would say also you want to be safe. So if you don't know what you're doing, maybe hire a trainer or something like that in the beginning and learn the movements so that you're doing it correctly and properly, and you can get as much out of it as possible, for sure.
excellent answer. All right, final question. Fasting ? What do you got? What do you got about fasting? Do you like? I mean, are you talking?
Is this a question?
It'll help if I pull in. Hold on, I have to unmute Brittany. All right, Brittany, go ahead, fire away.
So the whole question, just fasting ? So intermittent fasting, extended fast, do you do any of that? And if so, how do you work that in with your carb cycling and your regular day-to-day?
Sure. Yeah. So fasting is definitely a subject that I'm passionate about, especially for women. We know that fasting can be super powerful, but we also know that it is a stressor to the body. This is something that I call this fasting rabbit hole. This is something that I, like, when I started first, like years ago, started fasting and started keto, I started getting so many mental benefits. I started feeling good. I was like, okay, more is probably better. Not. And so I went down this fasting rabbit hole, and it was not a good situation. Especially for women, our hormones and things like that, they're just more sensitive to things like this, to stressors, right? And so I would say, if you are someone who's already under a ton of stress, like you have kids running around, you have schoolwork, you have all these different stressors in your life, then maybe fasting needs to be moderated a little bit. And so I think that we can go down this fasting rabbit hole because we're like, more is better. But I think that intermittent fasting is great. Personally, how I incorporate it is I do during the week, usually I do at least a 12-hour fast every night, which is just a regular, I wouldn't really consider that intermittent fasting, but I guess you could, but I do maybe depending on the day, I'll do like a 16-8. So I'll push my breakfast off. And usually I do this more on like feel. So for example, today, I was not really that hungry in the morning and I was super focused on my work. So I just had my coffee, and I usually do a little bit of MCT powder in my coffee. I do what's called like a fat fast. So I'll keep my calories to under like 100. I won't go over that. And those will come from fats, MCT oil. And so I still get really great cognitive benefits from that. And I still consider that, a 16, if I'm doing that for 16 hours and just having under like, maybe 50 to 100 calories, I consider that like a fat fast. And then I'll just try to listen to my body. So if there's some days that I wake up and I'm hungry, this is what I went through for a period of time. I just would ignore that and try to push past it. And I knew that was just adding a little more stress. So if I do notice that I'm hungry, I will eat. And I found that that's with fasting, you have to kind of find this happy medium between, listening to your body, but also realizing that sometimes if you are just beginning fasting, you are going to have those hunger pangs, and you kind of have to like weigh the pros and cons of that. But more of the story, especially for women, is you don't want to go down this fasting rabbit hole and chronically fast, day in and day out, because it's just not going to be a good situation. So I would kind of teeter between incorporating intermittent fasting, but maybe not every single day for an extended period of time.
Excellent. All right, friends. Well, we're going to wrap this up here. Now, Rachel, I will not release this as a podcast episode until your brand new podcast is live. So tell us about where people can find. Yeah, I'll let her say the name. It's an amazing name. So say the name and where people can find your new show.
Sure. So the name is Metflex and Chill. It's a play off of Netflix and Chill, obviously. And it will be launching officially on March 23rd. So I'm going to have a whole launch week, launching with tons of expert interviews. And we're actually doing tons of giveaways and all this stuff. So it's going to be super exciting. So you can search Metflex and Chill, and you can find me. I will probably be blasting it all over my social media, of course. So on my Instagram is rachelgregory.cns. And then my website is killingitketo.com. So yeah, all those platforms, I'll probably be talking all about it. So,
and guys, her stuff is so good. Like it's really well thought out. The blog has been amazing. And I've been able to be a little bit of a podcast big brother, and I've been egging her on to get this thing out there. I'm like, this is going to be so good. And everything she sends me, that's a little test. I'm like, this is really, really good. I can't wait for this to be live. So you will love her stuff. Especially like this is going to be an amazing resource when it comes to metabolic flexibility and learning what that is and how to get there. Rachel will deliver. So I want you guys to support that. So if you're listening to this as a podcast episode, you need to go and search Metflex and Chill. And that way you can hit the subscribe button and tune into everything that she has. It will be amazing. So Rachel, thank you so much for spending some time with my community here. I greatly appreciate that. And for all you guys that are tuned in, if you're listening to this, you can participate in these chats for free. This is a part of our free Mission Possible community. All you have to do is go to millionpoundmission.com. You'll see the link at the top of the page to join the community, and you can get plugged in. One of my favorite things to do is to take people like you guys that are part of the community and introduce you to experts like Rachel and let you interact directly. I think that's a super cool thing. I love to be that bridge of communication there. And that way you guys can get your questions answered like our friends did tonight. So again, Rachel, you're awesome. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you. You're awesome.
All right, everybody. It's time to get out there and own it. Every meal, every workout, every day. We will see you in the next group chat. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. Now, don't forget to head on over to millionpoundmission.com to pick up your free Mission Possible Community Virtual Welcome Kit. Now, this free resource is going to show you how to get plugged into our community chats, our amazing Facebook group. It'll show you how to sign up for one-on-one hot seat sessions with me, the PhD, and we'll even show you how to start your own local meetup group for that extra support. Now, remember, my friend, this isn't just a podcast. This is a community, and you are an important part of it. So head on over to millionpoundmission.com today and get plugged in.